Hi, how you doing? It's been a while since we've had a pure smackanori, and I thought it might be nice if I were to read you a story. So, among my collection of books, I have. Hang on, let me just grab a bookmark so I don't lose my page. Well thought out. I have this book here. This is one of a pair, Volume 1 and Volume 2, of Fights for the Championship, The Men and Their Times by Fred Henning. It's a lovely, lovely book, and to be honest with you, out of all the more modern books, and I say more modern in a fairly broad way, because it's not modern at all, it's well over 100 years old, I believe. But I've got books that date back many hundreds of years, so it's probably the ones that I'd keep. I've got a real affection for this. It's got a lot of information in it. Henning has assembled stories of all of the major fights for the championship, the major fighters, and a lot of their life in between. And he's done that through books that we're all familiar with, like Boxiana. But he's also spent a lot of time going through contemporary newspapers and magazines, publications, and picking up other things. So there's stuff in here that you won't find anywhere else easily. And it's written really well. The language is beautiful. So rather than me tell you the story in my words, I thought it might be fun to tell you a story in Henning's words. There are two provisos that I need to make before we dive straight into it. The first is that this particular tale is set in Ireland, when Dan Mendoza went and spent some time over there. And Henning's done a fairly good job of trying to capture the Irish accent in the way he's written it. And I'm not going to do that. So, please don't expect me to put on a dodgy Irish accent, because at best I'll embarrass myself, and at worst I'll annoy an entire nation. So I'm not going to do that. And secondly, the language it's not quite the way we talk today. Now, there's a little bit in it where Dan is being abused because of the fact that he's Jewish. So I'll keep that exactly as it is. But some of the words that are used to refer to Dan just in the text itself, I'm probably going to change. But we'll see. We'll make it up on the fly. So anyway, here's Smackanori, the story of how Daniel Mendoza became the champion of all Ireland. Time for the glasses. At the time when Mendoza visited Dublin with Philip Astley, there was a gentleman known in every sporting house as Squire Fitzgerald. He was almost a second edition of his notorious cousin, George Robert of that ilk, better known as Fighting Fitzgerald, who only 4 years previously had closed his murderous career on the gallows. The squire was a hot-headed fellow, renowned for his skill and daring in all kinds of sports. One evening he visited the amphitheatre in order to see the boxer, and later on at the club expressed himself somewhat contemptuously about the Jew, declaring that he was only a trickster who would stand no chance against a man of real courage and determination. Lord Westmeath was present and said, "Bedad, Fitz, my boy, it's yourself that could knock the concert out of him in no time, and it's myself that would like to see you do it." Fitzgerald replied that he thought he might lick the Jew in a fair fight, and other admirers of Fitz gave it as their opinion that the Jew would go down before the powerful arm of the stalwart squire. So persuaded did Mr. Fitzgerald become of his superiority that he declared he would challenge Mendoza the very next day. Now, Daniel held his class regularly in Dame Street between 11 and 2, and on the morning of the August the 2nd, 1791, many gentlemen who were not pupils entered his room together with his patrons. He was engaged in giving a lesson when shortly before noon Squire Fitzgerald entered, in company with Lord Westmeath, Lord Granard, the Earl of Ormond and his brother the Honourable Mr. Butler, Lord Harrington, Colonels St. George, St. Ledger, White and Craddock, and several well-known men of fashion in Dublin. The Duke of Leinster, stepping forward, said, "I wish to introduce you to my friend Mr. Fitzgerald, who would like to make trial of your skill." "Do you wish to take lessons from me?" airily asked Mendoza. "Bedad, sir," replied Fitzgerald, "it's mighty little you could teach me, I'm thinking, anyway, in the matter of fighting, for I dare say I've had as much experience as yourself." "You would, then, like to have the gloves on with me, sir?" said Dan. "Gloves be damned! I've come here to show you, sir, what an Irishman can do with his bare fists." "I must decline, sir, having a set to without the gloves." "What, sir? Do you mean to insult me? If you refuse, I'll brand you through Dublin as a coward." This very much upset Mendoza, who replied by telling him that he was no coward. "Then you will fight me," rejoined the furious squire. But Mendoza was firm, until Lord Westmeath told him that all these gentlemen had purposefully come down to see a mill with the Rawrons, and it was their intention to subscribe 50 guineas for him, whether he lost or won. This put an altogether different complexion on the matter, and Master Daniel immediately accepted the offer. The doors having been locked, the spectators, some 40 in number, arranged themselves around the room, and the two men proceeded to strip to the buff. I'm fairly sure that didn't mean then what it seems to mean now. But you never know. Maybe it did. Mendoza's cousin Aaron acted as his second and bottle holder, while Colonel Craddock and a Mr. Fremantle waited upon his opponent. The Duke of Leinster and Lord Granard acted as umpires. Time was called by His Grace, and the amateur and professional took their positions in the centre of the room, shook hands, and were ready for the impromptu mill. The Irishman was some 4 inches taller than Dan, and he weighed at least 12 stone. He was, moreover, a fairly built specimen of humanity, and having all the Hibernian fire and pluck of his race, was a toughish bit for the professor to tackle. But the squire had knocked about considerably with his fast set, and although he was pretty well in perfect condition by his love of athletics, he had not the hardiness of constitution which was possessed by Mendoza, who never by any chance took liberties with himself. The devil-may-care Irishman came to business at once, for he dashed in with an amount of recklessness which was astonishing. Curiously enough, though, Mendoza coolly slipped aside, or cleverly stopped the blows, and made not the slightest effort to inflict punishment upon his adversary. At length the performance became apparently a trifle monotonous, for the Duke of Leinster shouted out, "Why don't you hit him, Mendoza? This is not fighting, you're only playing with him." Then Squire Fitzgerald exclaimed, "Let him hit me if he can." And Mendoza smiled with such a provoking air of conscious superiority that the Irishman lost his temper and advanced to his opponent, yelling, "You damned Jew, don't stand there grinning. If you think you can thrash me, try and do it. But don't think you're going to play any of your cursed Jew tricks with me." Now, Mendoza, as our readers will remember, had a great repulsion to all who attacked his creed. In his youthful days, as he has told us in his memoirs, the abuse he received for being a Jew caused him to have many a battle, and when he heard his persuasion spoken of by the squire, his brow darkened, and there was a dangerous look in his snake-like eyes as he set his lips and almost hissed, "Well, if you will have it, you shall." As Fitzgerald came with a rush, Dan hit him flush on the nose, and the Irishman fell sprawling on the floor, blood pouring in torrents from the nasal organ. Again they faced each other, when the Jew at once took up the offensive and drove his opponent before him like a weak infant, until, lashing out with both fists, he sent him staggering amongst his friends. He'd been called a damned Jew, and he had no mercy afterwards. From that moment the Irishman knew that he had underrated Mendoza's powers, and after sticking pluckily to it for some 15 minutes, during which time he received dreadful punishment, his friends intervened, and the battle and the £50 were awarded to our hero. He said 50 guineas earlier, right? A guinea was a pound and a shilling, so 50 guineas was £52. There you go, nice little aside. Where were we? Ah, yes. This is what Squire Fitzgerald said to Mendoza after the affair was all over. Mendoza, you have licked me fairly, and I may tell you you're the only man that has ever beaten me. If in the heat of the moment I may have used any expressions that seemed insulting, I apologise for them. Give me your hand, sir. I'm proud to shake the hand of the bravest and most skillful boxer I have ever seen. So, we don't really know if Fitzgerald was indeed the champion of Ireland, but the implication's kind of there, and I'm willing to go with it. Let's say he was. Yes, Fitzgerald was the champion of Ireland, so that was the day that Mendoza, champion of all England, became Mendoza, champion of all Ireland. Either way, it's a lovely example of the kind of person that Mendoza was. This reticence to fight unless he knew for sure that the person actually really wanted it. And the idea that fighting with gloves was pretty common at that point, for which we can thank Broughton, I suppose. The idea that fighting without gloves was something that was considered a little bit special. But either way, I think it's a fantastic story. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's an amazing book, and if you'd like to get more of this sort of thing, then please say so in the comments. Stick something down there. Do the usual stuff, like, comment, share. Don't know, if you want, that'd be great. And yeah, thanks for your support. I'll see you soon.